Hello everyone, welcome to History Forge. My name is Taylor Hamblin. I am working on analyzing another primary source a day. I'm going to be focusing on the skill 1.7, which is under sourcing and summarizing. So we're going to be looking at kind of the source itself. And this is one of my favorite things to do with the source, is to verify whether it's trustworthy or not. So as you guys can kind of see here, I'll read along. Skill number 1.7, let's get my mouse, says describe the trustworthiness of the source. Period there too. This will be really valuable because you're not always going to be 100% positive if a source is actually helpful or not. Just because something exists, during the time period and was actually there, doesn't necessarily mean it's a trustworthy source. You might not be able to use it. So I found a source that I think expresses that and shows that. I'm going to go over it, and I really just want you to keep in mind this one important thing. You cannot trust every single source automatically because it comes from the time period of the event that you're studying. So for example, maybe you're doing a Civil War project and you find a really good letter from like Robert E. Lee, and you're doing a military topic, you're doing the Confederate Army, and you think, oh, this letter's gonna be great. Maybe not. Maybe the letter is not as good as you think because of a variety of reasons, and we're going to get into them. Before we move on, I would recommend writing these two questions down. If you need to pause the video, feel free. You can say, can we trust the source to have a first-hand experience? We'll talk about how we figured that out. And then finally, what information can this source tell us? So I want you to write down those two things. Again, you can pause me if you need to. I'm going to find, my rubrics right here. So again, copy these two down. Pause me if you need. And I'm going to move on. So we're going to look at these two skills, and we're going to analyze this source right here. You can feel free to write it down. Make sure my camera's working. Yep. So we got the Louisiana Purchase. You go ahead and write that down if you wish. And we're going to talk about the primary source itself. I'm also going to give you a little bit of background information about the Louisiana Purchase. And, in the beginning when we're reading background information, we don't need to really memorize anything. We don't need to, we're not going to use it for the primary source itself. It's just helpful to know these things in the back of our head, like why the source is important or how it could matter. So I'm going to go ahead and read this stuff. So right here it says, in 1803, the United States purchased an area of land from France called Louisiana. The land stretched from the Mississippi River to present-day Montana and covered some 828,000 square miles. So I'm going to pause right there. Imagine that. Like, this land that was purchased from France was huge, big amount of land that encompasses several of our states, including the one in South Dakota where I currently teach. So, huge amounts of land. In American history classes go over a lot of detail into the Louisiana Purchase and what happens after the big western migration of American citizens and immigrants who traveled to America. It affects thousands of millions of people. Also including the Native Americans who were forced off their lands into other tribes. I'm going to go ahead and keep on reading. So France had originally explored the land, but ceded it to Spain in 1763. In 1801, with Napoleon's France conquering much of Europe, Spain returned Louisiana to France. The United States felt threatened by the possibility of a Napoleonic colony in North America. President Jefferson sent diplomats to France to attempt to buy New Orleans and West Florida. In need of money to finance its other wars, France sold the whole of Louisiana to the U.S. for $15 million. And I'm going to pause right there. To be very clear, $15 million sounds like a lot, but when you consider how much land that was given to the United States, it wasn't. We're talking cents per acre. It was a massive purchase for Thomas Jefferson and the United States government, and many people had mixed feelings about it, and we're going to talk about that. But it was a very large purchase, just to kind of show you what it looks like. I'm going to go to Google real quick and just, should be a map. It's pretty easy to see. Yeah, there we go. You can kind of see these maps here. They show you a really good idea. So again, South Dakota, where I currently teach, the Louisiana Purchase is part of that. So big piece of land. A lot of states were formed out of it, either parts of states or entire states. It more than doubled the size of the United States that existed at that time period. So really big, important purchase. All right, so going back, let's finish this paragraph. The Louisiana Purchase doubled the land area of the United States, but not all Americans supported Jefferson's decision. Read the following documents to learn why Jefferson's Federalist rivals opposed the Louisiana Purchase. So, based off reading that, I know this last sentence especially is telling me kind of what to think. It's saying read the following documents to learn why Jefferson's Federalist rivals opposed the Louisiana Purchase. The only two words in here, or three words that are kind of phrases I see that we would need to define, are Jefferson, Federalist, and Louisiana Purchase. We know what the Louisiana Purchase is. It's this big green thing right here that was bought by Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is the third president of the United States. And then Federalist is a political party. So if you didn't know that, you should maybe write those things down, because it'll help you understand what we're thinking of, or why these things are important. So we have Jefferson, Federalist, and Louisiana Purchase. Now, going back to these ideas, we're going to answer our skill, describe the trustworthiness of the source, but we're going to use these two kind of separate questions to help us do that. So first of all, can we trust the source to have a first-hand experience? Does the primary source we're about to read actually come from that time period? How do we know? And this is why I wanted to bring the rubric up. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see better. There are 7 skills in sourcing. I'll zoom in so you can see them just a tad better. There we are. And I'm going to highlight them for you. Those are the 7 skills in sourcing. And right now we're working on number 7. But the other 6 are really helpful for proving number 7 is accurate. So for example, what do you need to prove that a source comes from that time period, has that first-hand account? Well, you would need to know the date and creator of it, first of all. You would need to know whether or not it's a primary source, so if that person was actually at the event. You might want to know the audience of the source, the purpose, like what kind of language are they using? Or can we say without a shadow of a doubt that this thing came from that time period? That's the first thing we're going to try to find out. So, as I read this primary source, and you read along with me, I want you to be thinking, does this source feel and sound like it comes from this time period of the early 1800s, okay? So, we're going to go jump in. We have what it's called. It's called The Purchase of Louisiana. It's by Alexander Hamilton, which is a popular name in American history, especially because of a recent play that was made about him. The source is called Purchase of Louisiana, and it's an editorial written by Alexander Hamilton for the New York Evening Post, July 1803. So if I was reading this, it comes from a newspaper. That's what the New York Evening Post is. Editorials are like opinion sections. So Alexander Hamilton is writing an opinion in a newspaper, so it's for the public. So I'm answering a lot of questions so far for my sourcing. It's from 1803 as well, July 1803 to be more specific. So right off the bat, I got a lot of information I could use to prove that this comes from the time period. Can I trust that it's a first-hand source? So far, so good. Right now, it looks really like the source information is telling me that yes, it is. Let's go ahead and look at the actual source. It's only one paragraph that we got. I'm going to read it, and we're going to see if we can find any information that proves it comes from that time period. So let's go ahead and begin. The purchase of New Orleans is essential to the peace and prosperity of our western country and opens a free and valuable market to our commercial states. Okay. This purchase will probably make it seem like Mr. Jefferson is brilliant. So right here he says make it seem. He makes it seem like he's about to tell us something about that opinion. And he says, any man, however, who possesses any amount of intelligence will easily see that purchase is the result of lucky coincidences and unexpected circumstances and not the result of any wise or thoughtful action on the part of Jefferson's administration. So stopping here, he definitely sounds like he's got beef with Jefferson. Alexander Hamilton definitely does not sound like he enjoys Jefferson. Like, look at he makes it sound like, he's being very sarcastic. He's like, oh, it might seem like Jefferson's really brilliant, but in reality, he's just lucky. It's a lot of coincidence. Anybody who has any kind of half of mind could think of this thing. So it makes it seem like Jefferson's accomplishment isn't really that big of a deal. Anybody could have done it. So that's a good idea to keep in mind. Let's make sure we think about that. So we can even type that down, that just for notes, that Alexander Hamilton is being sarcastic and does not seem to like Thomas Jefferson. Now, of course, if we were writing your notes, I don't have time to do it right here, but I would expect you to find evidence to prove it, and I just went over it. So if you were going to do this, you'd want to find quotes and information that proves that statement. All right. Going on, as to the vast region west of the Mississippi, it is a wilderness with numerous tribes of Indians. And when we consider the present territory of the United States and that not 1/16 is yet under occupation, the possibility that this new purchase will be a place of actual settlement seems unlikely. So he's basically saying that because we're not even colonizing our own land that we already own, why would we we're not going to move out west. It's very unlikely that's what we're going to do because we just don't have the space. We have so much space that it's pointless to have this much land. We don't need it. So it's probably just going to remain a wilderness and a place for Native Americans. Then he goes on to say, if our own citizens do eventually settle this new land, it would weaken our country and central government. So now he's saying that it's actually a bad idea. He's kind of contradicting himself. He says up here that, oh yeah, this is a great purchase. It's a brilliant idea. Any numbskull could think about it. And then he says, actually, though, it's a really bad idea. So in the same paragraph, he says two different things. And then he says, on the whole, we can honestly say that this purchase is at best extremely problematic. So that's his final conclusion, that this purchase is actually not a good thing. So let's summarize. Alexander Hamilton is being sarcastic and does not seem to like Thomas Jefferson. In the beginning, so we'll say in the beginning of the paragraph, Hamilton says the purchase is a good idea. But later in the same paragraph, he says that the purchase is a bad idea. And again, I'm writing answers. Like, you would need to find quotes. You would need to find evidence. Like, right now, I'm not going to spend time doing that just because it would lengthen the video. But look at all this evidence that we have. All these things I underlined. Like, I would expect you right now in your notes to find ideas like, oh, what's a good piece of evidence that would prove this? Like, that's your job right now to think about that, okay? Even if you need to pause the video, do that so you can actually end up doing it. Yeah, we got about 11 minutes. So let's continue on. So you're writing evidence down. Looking at this paragraph as the information we have, let's answer our first question. Can we trust a source to have a first-hand experience? Here's what I'm going to say, and in fact, I'll just do it right here. I'm going to say yes. Because Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton had a well-known rivalry, and this can be seen in Hamilton's editorial. And then, in order to prove that, I would just copy and paste all this stuff as my evidence. This is all the information I have. And I would probably find a quote and evidence like that too, like actually prove that what I'm saying is accurate. But all this stuff, actually, I'll take that back. I would say this is my explanation right here. So I'll even make a comment to show that. This is my explanation to that first question. But yeah, I think it is a trustworthy. I think it's a first-hand source because Alexander Hamilton lived in that time period. If we look at our skills like date creator, audience, purpose, well, we know it comes from 1803. We know the purpose of it really is for Alexander Hamilton to basically make fun of Thomas Jefferson for how bad of an idea he has. This fits. This makes sense because Alexander Hamilton did not like Thomas Jefferson. So the paragraph looks like it makes sense. It looks like it comes from that time period. So I would agree with it. I do think that, yes, it does show his rivalry. But again, if you're a student doing this, you need evidence and an explanation to go along with it. So you'd want to be thinking of how to do that, okay? Let's go into the next one for trustworthiness. Again, this is all one big answer, kind of going into it. That's the first part. Did it come from the time period? I think I've proved that, yes, it did. Next, what information can the source tell us? This is my favorite part because a lot of people mess up, and it's just kind of fun to debate of what does this information actually tell you? So this is what Hamilton says. Hamilton said, we can honestly say that this purchase is at best extremely problematic. This is what a lot of students would do. A lot of students would be like, oh yeah, the Louisiana purchase is a bad idea. It shouldn't have been done. Look at this primary source. Alexander Hamilton said it. He's got a cool play about him. We should believe him. And a lot of people would stop there. But was it a bad idea? Was it a good idea? Why is Hamilton the one source that gets to say whether or not? And especially if we consider this, Hamilton's being very biased right now. Look at one of our sourcing skills. Number 6, describe characteristics, bias, or perspectives of the source's creator. Hamilton doesn't like Thomas Jefferson. In the same paragraph, he says the Louisiana Purchase is a great idea. Any idiot could figure it out. And then he says, actually, never mind, it was a bad idea, because he's so conflicted. In reality, the Louisiana Purchase is an excellent thing that happened for the United States government. It doubled the size of land. It allowed for generations of Americans to travel west and improve and grow. There were a lot of problems with it, like especially with the Native American tribes, but from a historical standpoint and a political standpoint at the time, it was an excellent idea. Alexander Hamilton knew that, and you can kind of see in this paragraph that he's conflicted. So, what can we trust? We can't trust. We can. Oh man, cap locks. There we go. We cannot trust Hamilton to. We cannot trust Hamilton's ideas or beliefs about the purchase because he is extremely biased towards Thomas Jefferson in a negative way. And you can, again, you would need to have evidence. I think there's a lot of evidence here. He's clearly being sarcastic. Pick your sentence and put it in. Then you'd have to explain it. But he's obviously being biased because of that. Now, there's a second part to the question. What could we get out of this? What does Hamilton's information tell us about anything from the past? Well, we can trust Hamilton's source. Oh, did I spell that right? Hamilton's source to be evidence that he had a large, or let's see, not a large, how about a significant feud with Thomas Jefferson. Oops. Say we can prove that he did not consider Thomas Jefferson cunning or his equal. And I could say, again, I'll use my race strategy. I can prove this because of the way he belittles Jefferson in the beginning of the paragraph. And again, you would need to find an actual piece of evidence that proves that. You'd have to show me the sentence that proves that point. But can you see now, this source does give us a lot of information, but not how you might think. This does not actually tell us whether the Louisiana Purchase was a good idea or a bad idea. It really only shows us how angry Hamilton was at Jefferson. We can't trust him right now because of that. But we can trust him to show us how much he didn't like Jefferson. So if you were going to make a project that showed these two's feud, this would be an excellent source. But if you were showing this source to prove that the Louisiana Purchase is a bad idea, I would challenge that evidence quite a lot because there's a lot of other evidence that I could use to prove how good of an idea it was. So that's how that trustworthiness works. Obviously, here I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see the entire thing. There's a lot going on with this answer. If you need to pause to write down notes, you can. But, all these notes, I would expect you, after taking those notes, to write a decent, answer of 3 to 4 sentences, telling me the answer, finding me evidence, and explaining that evidence. Again, it's always a really big important thing for us when we're writing history and analyzing it. So that's it for me. Please feel free to pause at any time to take notes, and that's it. If you're my students, go ahead and shut me down. Everybody else, hello and welcome. Hope you enjoyed the source analysis. I think Jefferson's source itself is really interesting just because how much politics really went into his persona along with Alexander Hamilton. They were politicians. They were presidents. They had a lot of beef, as you could say, with one another. And so when we're analyzing sources between the two especially, or when one's writing about the other, we definitely want to explore that topic. So if you like these primary sources, feel free to check out the others. They got a lot of other videos. I'm going to be making 1 or 2 each week. I'm going to continue to do that. If you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. And again, thanks for stopping by. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye.